special welcome to the veterans and the guests who have joined us for our annual Veterans Day ceremony at New Prague High School. We are honored to have our veterans and guests with us today as we celebrate Veterans Day. We would also like to welcome the New Prague Middle School students and staff who are joining us via live stream this morning. At this time, please rise as the New Prague High School Wind Ensemble, under the direction of Mr. John Boland, performs a medley entitled Salute to America's Finest. As we welcome our veterans and guests, please then remain standing after our veterans and guests are positioned at their seats. After that, the color guard will present the nation's colors. stand or remain standing as the New Prague Veterans Honor Guard presents our nation's colors. At this time, we ask that you join in recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. That will immediately be followed by the singing of the national anthem under the direction by the New Prague Choir under the direction of Ms. Nicole Teaching. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. At this time, I would like to introduce our first speaker of today's program. It is my pleasure to introduce Anna Shalee, who will be speaking her thoughts on the meaning of Veterans Day. Please welcome Anna Shalee.
On this day, since 1938, Americans have come together to commemorate and celebrate those who have served honorably in the U.S. Armed Forces. They have used it as a day to reflect upon the bravery of each soldier putting our lives ahead of theirs in order to serve the betterment of our country. Unfortunately, as time went on, these celebrations became less popular. But why? Why is it that fewer people acknowledge this holiday? Is it that the average person is too busy to take time out of their day to commemorate a veteran? Or is it that simply people who don't understand Veterans Day don't understand veterans? My great-grandpa, Marvin Allen, was in his late teens when he enlisted for World War II. He wanted to join the Army in order to rescue his brother from a prisoner of war camp in Germany, but he was placed in the Navy instead. For some time, he did dishes in a tiny, cramped kitchen, but through his hard work and dedication, he worked his way up to become the baker. He may not have been on the front lines, but he was necessary. Every day, he baked 48 loaves of bread at a time, because, after all, he had nearly 350 mouths to feed. He did this for the next few months, and when the war was over, he returned home to open arms. 10 years after World War II ended and the world rejoiced, Americans were recruited for the Vietnam War. The war was a hard fight overseas, and it did not become any easier once the veterans traveled back home. Both my grandfathers fought in Vietnam, along with many of the men and women seated here today. My grandpa, Larry Allen, was an aircraft instrument repairman with the Air Force. He spent 10 to 12 hours a day working on engines and flight instruments of aircrafts. During their homecoming, the treatment both my grandfathers received was full of disrespect. They were people that had risked their lives for America, and those Americans were treating them with hate and hostility. For a while, my grandpa did not even acknowledge that he was a veteran, out of fear of retaliation. But as time went on, the country realized their mistake. They realized that these were people who had fought for them, and they were brave. Today, these people are recognized as heroes and are welcomed with open arms. These veterans continue to deserve our respect and gratitude. Most of us are able to acknowledge a veteran in our life that we can thank today. But if you are unable to, you can thank my grandpa, who is a Vietnam veteran, my great-grandpa, who is a World War II veteran, or one of the men and women sitting in front of you today.
It is my pleasure to introduce one of our two guest speakers today. Today's guest speaker will join us via Zoom remotely from Camp Lorang, Kuwait. Lieutenant Colonel Jacob Helgestad is the infantry commander for the 1st Battalion 194th Armor Regiment. We are honored to have Lieutenant Colonel Helgestad speak to us today about Veterans Day and his unit's recent service while being deployed. Please welcome Lieutenant Colonel Jacob Helgestad.
Good afternoon, everybody. My story. So why? For the kids around the world to have the opportunity to be just that, kids, to live free of tyranny and oppression. When I was deployed to Kosovo, I was responsible to reestablish the rule of law in Satinje. Basically, I had to rebuild the city council. I was responsible to enable the Serbs to return to their homes in this now all Albanian town. During the war, Satinje saw horrific genocidal fighting, and the local Albanians were not overly enthused that was helping to bring the Serbs back. One Saturday morning, a little boy, probably no more than 10, found me and my soldiers while he was walking the family cows through town. He told us that he had found a bomb. To say we were a bit skeptical is an understatement. We had him take us to the location, and to my surprise, he did indeed find an IED. We found out later the locals had placed it in a specific house for me as an intimidation against me, but it was found by a child. As the World Watch Kabul this last August, I led over 400 soldiers as we secured and defended part of the Hamid Kaiser International Airport. Over 30,000 Afghans passed through our area of the airport. Thousands of them children who had known nothing but war. When the children would finally enter our area, they became kids, running around and playing, and laughing, and turning office furniture into the best games ever. They would sit on office chairs and push each other down the street, racing as they spun around. But I specifically remember one little girl. She was maybe 3 or 4, and completely and utterly afraid of me. Which you can understand, as I can't imagine what she was thinking, staring up at me, a large American wearing body armor and surrounded by soldiers. We would always give the kids high fives and do our best to make sure they felt safe. This little girl, though, was having none of it. Finally, at the urging of her brother, she steps up and she punches my palm. This little ball of energy just let loose, and suddenly, there was a smile. Later in the day, she saw me again and came running up and gave me another high five, laughing and giggling. She was gone the next day, flown with her family somewhere in the world. Why? For my fellow soldiers and our families. I've had the opportunity to lead soldiers in Kosovo, Iraq, and now the Middle East. Each deployment was unique, but it was our deployment. It was our shared memories. Even now, I'll run into someone and we'll laugh at something that happened. I'm fairly certain it isn't actually that funny, but to us, it is the funniest thing ever. Currently, I have the greatest job. I have over 1,100 soldiers under my command, the sons and daughters of our great nation, and our greatest national treasure, my greatest responsibility. It is my responsibility to ensure we are trained and ready for anything. Ready to fly to Kabul at a moment's notice. Ready to care for Afghan civilians as we search for a new life. Ready for the unknown. We cannot just talk about veterans without talking about their families, our families. Ask any veteran and they will talk about their loved ones. Most of us carry pictures or something that reminds us of those who left. I carry a 14-year-old newspaper clipping from the day I got back from Iraq, a certain picture of someone with a Disney princess, and pictures of a certain 6th grade teacher. Finally, why? For all of you, sitting in this room is the future of our great nation. The future teachers who will teach the next generation to think beyond the known. The future doctors who will cure some disease, and scientists who will discover the yet to be discovered. Everyone wants to grow up so fast, but you can just be kids. You don't have to worry about finding an IED. You don't have to worry about us being evacuated from our country. You can be anything you want, and you can do anything you want. So that is my Veterans Day story. It's why I choose to be a soldier and a veteran. Again, I'd like to thank Mrs. Adams and Mr. Wetchka for this opportunity. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. At this time, we are going to have the New Prague High School Choir and Wind Ensemble perform God Bless America. welcome State Representative and veteran Brian Farr. Representative Farr was elected as District 20A State Representative in November of 2020, and he also just retired in August of 2021 after 34 years of service from the National Guard. Please welcome Representative Farr.
Thank you, Mrs. Adams, and thank you to Prague for inviting me. It's an honor to speak here on behalf of our service members. Today is a day we spend remembering those service members who through the centuries have come together to fight for a common cause, defend the American way of life, defend our borders, our people, and help others out across the world, as Jake mentioned a couple times. I have to confess, I did not know this, but I understand some of the Helgestads are here today, and so I just want to tell you that I've worked with Jake many times in my career, and his 1,100 soldiers are lucky to have him over there. So thank you to the Helgestads for what you're doing on this end while Jake is taking care of his soldiers on that end. And then I have to confess that if he looks a little tired, I started texting him last night and I forgot about the time difference. So it may be my fault if he looked tired today. And to the Allens, I just, great job with this speech. I wanted to thank you. It just, between that and then Jake's comments, it reminds me of a story. 2003, 2004, I was deployed with a unit to Europe, and I wasn't there at the time this happened, but a good friend recounted the story for me. So that the unit got to Livorno, Italy, 2003, and a 70-year-old man saw the Red Bull patch and started running and screaming and knocking on all the doors and the posts, saying, "The Red Bull is back, the Red Bull is back." And he ended dropping to his knees and weeping because he remembers that Minnesota unit that came there and helped some 55 years ago, 50-some years before that, and helped liberate his country, and it meant that much to him. So that, to me, sticks out as a story of how much the world appreciates what all of you have done and what Jake's doing right now. So I had to share that one, but my assignment today was flag etiquette, and so as you all know, if you don't hit those topics that you're given in your assignment, you'll probably fail, and I certainly don't want to do that today. So, so just a couple of thoughts there. You notice today when the national anthem and we saluted the flag, all the other flags dipped but the U.S. flag. Of course, we do not ever dip that one. We all know that we don't ever let the flag touch the ground. Those are pretty common ones, and it's never flown upside down unless it's in a state of emergency. So. Some simple ones there. If you have a flag on a vehicle, it should be on your passenger side. Just one flag, it should be on the passenger side. Much like the flag here is on the right side of all the other flags in front. And you'll see, if you notice the soldiers here, if you've got flags that let's say you've got a magnet you're going to put on the side of a car, they shouldn't be the same. They're opposite. You look at the soldiers here, and it kind of looks funny on the right shoulder, that flag. It looks like maybe it's backwards. It's because the U.S. military never moves backwards. We're always moving forward, and so that flag looks as though it's flying when you're going forward. So, enough of that. I'm hoping that passed the homework assignment, and so I'm gonna try for some extra credit. I get asked a lot, how can I thank a veteran? What can I do for him? Because, as Mrs. Adams said, 34 years myself, I've done this many, many times. And so, for me, there's a phrase that comes to mind, and that phrase is, be the kind of American worth fighting for. If you want to thank a veteran, be the kind of American worth fighting for. And of course, that probably means different things to different people. But to me, that means that we need to do a better job of showing respect for each other. Does not mean that you have to agree with me and I have to agree with you, but we should be willing to listen to each other and find some common ground and find a way forward. And I'm afraid that those of you that look a little more like me, maybe a little gray, a little thinner on top. We're not always doing the best job we can right now for those folks sitting in the bleachers of showing them how we can respect each other. And I think we need to do a better job there. You know, this country, since its inception, was founded on the fact that it's a melting pot of religions, ethnicities, races, and ideas. We found a way to come together for hundreds of years. And I believe we can find a way to do that again today. Because I have never, ever met a veteran that wanted to serve for a divided country. Ever. So I'm not here to stand on the soapbox. I'm probably, some of my actions in the past have not followed the advice I just gave. You know, I think we can do a better job there of being the type of American worth fighting for. You know, much of the world's population spends its existence just trying to figure out how to feed the family, get something over their head, and find clean water. And you know, some of our biggest concerns are when the iPhone 75 is coming out or whatever it is. I didn't have time to text the kids this morning to find out what number we're on now. I'd lost track. Or whether we get 3 or 4 weeks of vacation this year. So, you know, it's time, I think, that we stop looking at trying to change the past and move towards the future. A future for the betterment of America, because again, I've never met a veteran that didn't want that. So again, if you want to thank a veteran, I say be that kind of American that's worth fighting for. So I'll close today with what I close every veteran speech I think I've ever given, and that is, you know, I would encourage you today and any day that you run across one of these folks to thank them for their service. No question about it. But I'll tell you this, if their family is there, I would encourage you to thank them as well. Because while Jake is over there, believe this or not, the Army makes life very easy for him. Somebody's making his meals, he's not doing any dishes, somebody's doing his laundry, he's got one focus. While back at the home front, somebody else has to pick up all the slack. And so he couldn't do what he does. Many of us couldn't do what we do without the support of our family. So if there's a family member there, thank that family member as well, because they are equally a part of this thing. They're part of being a veteran as well, so, and supporting that veteran. So again, thanks for having me out today. I really appreciate it. Mrs. Adams, thanks for the invite. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and to all you veterans, thanks for your service. I deeply appreciate it.
As we heard Lieutenant Colonel Helga Stad state, 103 years ago on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, World War I ended. At this time, New Prague High School senior Maddie Hollicky will present the poem In Flanders Fields, written during World War I as a remembrance to those killed in action.
In Flanders fields, the poppies blow. Between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the lark still bravely singing fly. Scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow. Loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw. The torch be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
On this Veterans Day, we remember the service of our veterans and renew our national promise our sacred obligations to our veterans and their families who have sacrificed so much for our nation's freedom. When we think of the selfless military personnel who are willing to sacrifice their lives for our security, we realize how much we have to be grateful for. At this time, we will recognize the men and women who sit before us today for their courageous efforts to defend our freedom. We are honored to have our veteran guests in attendance today. Included are a number of veterans living in our community, New Prague area school alumni, as well as current New Prague High School staff. Please rise when your name is announced and be recognized for your devoted commitment to our country. I would ask that we hold our applause until all names have been announced. New Prague High School staff members: Kevin Baer, Iraq and Afghanistan War; Joe Bisick, Army; Greg Seiler, Army; Chad Lukish, Air Force; Amber Teelbar, Army. Students: Bree Anderson, Cece Madsen, Jarrett Wood. Honor Guard members: Dirk Berger, Navy, Vietnam; Paul Bush, Army, Vietnam; Bob Bonsack, Army, Vietnam; Spanny Sapleka, Army, Vietnam; Randy Fierst, Navy, Vietnam; Tony Howard, Air Force, Vietnam; Jim Hayda, Navy, Vietnam; Pete Krings, Army, Vietnam; Rodney Sewer, Marine, Grenada; Clarence Tupy, Army, Vietnam; Tom Vlasic, Army, Vietnam; John Giesen, Army, Vietnam; Ken Tupy, Army, Vietnam; Tom Young, Army, Vietnam; Mark Dvorak, Air Force, Vietnam; John Giesen, Army, Vietnam; John Metzdorf, Marines, Beirut; Jim Perkel, Army, Vietnam; Dave Tukulski, Marines, Cold War. And now for our guests: Larry Allen, Air Force, Vietnam; Marvin Allen, Navy, World War II; Ken Boyer, Navy, Korean War; William Boysen, Navy, Vietnam; Dave Bruzek, Air Force, Vietnam; Steve Cox, Army, Iraq; Daniel Diaz, Army; Linda Dvorak, Air Force, Gulf War; Patrick Ronald Faney, National Guard; George Fisher, Air Force, National Guard, Vietnam and Gulf War; Julie Fish, Air Force, Gulf War; Thomas Fitzke, Army; Gregory Gagner, Army, Vietnam; Bill Giesen, Army Artillery, Vietnam; Ed Giesen, Air Force, Vietnam; Leo Giesen, Army, Desert Storm; David Herman, Marines, Desert Storm; Joe Novotny, Army, Vietnam; Eric Nulf, Marines, Gulf War; Lloyd Polly, Army, Vietnam; Deb Portner, Navy, Gulf War; Mike Portner, Navy, Gulf War; Patrick Prague, Navy; Dwayne Reynolds, Army, Persian Gulf; Roger Shambor, Navy, Vietnam; Joseph Sklazacek, Army; Joseph Stahl, Army; Pete Stemmer, Army, Vietnam; Randy Liebel, Army Reserves National Guard, Vietnam and Gulf War; Tom Locke, Marines; Larry Okendorf, Army, Vietnam; Aaron Halloran, Navy, Gulf War; Sarah White, Army, Iraq; Tristan White, Army. At this time, I would ask that any other veterans in attendance who were unable to sign in upon arrival, and any New Prague High School students that are actively involved in any cadet programs or who have enlisted with any of our military branches to also stand and be recognized. Let's give a well-deserved round of applause to these men and women. At this time, please remain standing as we observe a moment of silence for all of those who have given their lives for our country. Let us also keep our thoughts and prayers with those men and women who are currently serving in our country and have put themselves in harm's way so that we might live safe and free. Please respectfully join in observing a moment of silence. Thank you. Please remain standing as we hear taps performed. Please remain standing as we conclude today's ceremony. The New Prague Veterans Honor Guard will retire the colors, and our veterans and guests will exit the gym as the New Prague High School Band and Choir perform Stars and Stripes Forever.